Thanks for joining us here on 9 News Plus. I'm Chris Bianchi, and today we're going to get into the Trump indictment. Former President Donald Trump, in case you missed it, on Thursday, March the 30th, was formally indicted by a New York grand jury in relation to a hush money payment that he made to adult film star Stormy Daniels back in 2016. For joining us for a bit more about this, it's 9 News legal expert Whitney Traylor. Whitney, you were saying before this that you were expecting the indictment to come. It did come down. I suppose you were probably not too surprised by this, were you?
No, I wasn't surprised at the indictment. I still maintain the position that of all the cases he's looking at, which I'm sure we'll talk about, this one I think is probably the weakest. And really what this indictment boils down to is in 2016, Michael Cohen made a hush money payment, $130,000 to...
Michael Cohen, by the way, just to clarify, the fixer or Trump's kind of handler of finances.
Right. Yeah, and attorney.
And attorney,
so,
yeah.
Right, and so they made this, he made a $130,000 payment. Then President Trump was elected, and in the White House, he was repaying that $130,000 out of his personal account, $35,000 a month. And where the allegation or where the indictment comes from is that they listed it as a legal expense, right, on their financials. So under the New York Penal Code, there's a violation for falsifying business records. And then they're tying into, it's a little convoluted because it hasn't been unsealed, the actual indictment, but they're tying in campaign contributions were also a part of that to kind of escalate the severity of the indictment.
So to be clear, the payment itself is not illegal. It's how it was labeled, correct?
Exactly. They labeled it as legal expenses when it was this hush money payment, and then when President Trump repaid it out of his personal account as president. And so they're saying, yes, this was a falsification of business records.
Why do you think this is the weakest of the cases?
Well, when you look at the various cases, this one, there's evidence, but there's so many layers to it. And when you look at Georgia, the Georgia election fraud case, that one is very strong, and there's a grand jury in that one. When you look at the January 6th insurrection, a big issue there was that a number of people were called to testify, and they were fighting it. Lindsey Graham and others. And what
Mike Pence, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And a number of them. And now the courts have ruled they had to testify. And so now those folks are risking perjury. So they're going to be honest. That really, I think, harms President Trump.
Okay. So it's basically in relation to the other ones. Again, the payment itself, we found out about this back in 2016. So what happens now? So Trump formally indicted. Does that mean he has to go to court? Well,
Yes.
And by the way, want to also be transparent with our audience here. We're recording this on Friday morning, March the 31st, so things can and probably will develop as we head over the next few days. But
Right.
as of Friday morning, what happens next?
Right. So next, after an indictment, somebody is either arrested or they voluntarily submit themselves. And so in this case, presumably the law enforcement in New York is coordinating with Secret Service and all that. So there's all these issues, but essentially he'll have to turn himself in, get the fingerprints, get the photo, and then there will be an arraignment and that's when presumably we'll know what the actual charges are because the indictment has been sealed. So at the arraignment, we will have... there's a lot happening in the newsroom today. This is super exciting, and so there's a lot of... So I got a little distracted. And so the arraignment, that's when he'll then, obviously say not guilty, and there'll be a flurry of motions. His attorneys are going to fight this thing up and down, but yes, he will have to, face those charges. We'll know, I think that's going to happen next week, that they'll coordinate it, and he'll probably submit himself to the DA's office. Okay,
so that's the next step there. In terms of the case itself, when will we probably have the trial? How will that look?
Yeah, so that will probably be a year from now. And
Wow.
I say that because his lawyers are going to file every possible motion. They're going to...
delay it, and which is a Trump tactic for years.
That's exactly right. But politically, I could see him using this to his advantage. I mean, technically, I guess they could handcuff him and take him in. I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll give him a certain level of decorum, which they should.
And as of this morning, they did say that they were not going to handcuff him.
Exactly. Although, you don't know. I mean,
You don't know.
One thing about him is he's an X factor. We don't know how he's going to respond. I mean, his lawyers may coordinate with law enforcement in New York how they're going to do it, and he could flip the script at the last minute just to create this buzz, because there's a large portion of the population that simply believes and will just follow what he says, which is actually a little bit concerning in light of some of his claims to get out there and get violent in some ways,
or hint at it, or strongly hint at it.
Suggest that, yes.
I guess when it comes to this from a broad perspective as well, another thing that may play in is that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said on Thursday, as soon as the arraignment, or as soon as the indictment came out, that he would not allow, Florida would not allow an extradition of Trump to New York. How does that work?
I don't even think that's coming into play. I'm not even sure why DeSantis, I guess he wanted to get a political stand. I mean, that's not even going to be an issue. President Trump is not able to flee in this country, everywhere he is. So he's going to submit himself to New York next week, and there won't be any issues of extradition. Ron DeSantis, I think, just wanted to jump in to be part of the headlines.
So that's not something that's...
No, that's not...
There's no legal backing to that.
Well, there's no issue of it even being a necessity. There's no question of, hey, there's a criminal in another state who's refusing to come back to answer and account for this. That's not what's happening. There's no need for DeSantis to even... There won't be a discussion about extradition.
Huh.
I mean, Donald Trump is going to go back to New York at some point or another. He has residence there. He has business there, right? So
you're saying that maybe he's just doing this for political points?
Ron DeSantis, yes, exactly, right. And I know you say that, but also, along that front, what President Trump has been saying is actually very concerning, because for since this has come up, he's saying, oh, this is election rigging for 2024, saying this is impacting the election. And what's really concerning is that he continues to attack the integrity of our elections. And I can say unequivocally that in 2020, the election wasn't stolen. I'm saying this as a legal analyst. I've looked at the hundreds of cases that were filed up and down. There was no widespread fraud. In fact, Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, they were out there saying, I can prove fraud, 17 different ways. And then he went into court, and they didn't even plead fraud. They weren't even alleging in a court of law fraud. It was these minor technicalities. But when he got out on the podium, he's saying, oh, we can prove fraud. And so I'm kind of diverting to say the election wasn't stolen. But because President Trump has such a strong and blind, in some ways, following, right? People are questioning the integrity of the 2020 election, and now he's saying, oh, well, this is impacting 2024. And so the two things that really kind of keep us together as a democracy is the integrity of our elections and our judges, right? And the objectivity of our judges. And all of that has come into question in the last 4 years. We've gotten so partisan that people are now saying, Democrat appointed judge XYZ ruled this way. And if we start getting our judges where we don't trust the judges, the arbiter of our disputes, then we're really in trouble, because we are polarized. There is going to be conflict. And if you can't trust the entity, the branch that's designed to handle that, if you don't trust it, then we have no law and order. And so this is really concerning with his narrative, because it's going beyond a political stump. It's going beyond a stump speech into actually impacting our social and cultural interactions.
And I'll say, I noticed that as well with a lot of the attacks on the indictment itself were very politically based. I think even DeSantis's argument was that a Soros-backed district attorney,
yes.
And you're saying here that the elections and the judges themselves are being attacked, but I mean, isn't kind of the rule of law at this point being attacked itself? Because again, the attacks are saying that this is a politically motivated witch hunt. I think those are Trump's exact words.
Right.
Isn't that the concern as well? I mean,
yes.
even if you're saying that this is a relatively weak case. I mean,
Yeah.
few people are disputing the fact that there was a hush money payment made to a porn star,
Right.
and that this is at least morally pretty dubious, right?
Yeah, and that's the spin. They're saying, oh, he's being charged for an accounting error. But and trying to dismiss it as, oh, this was just, they just misclassified it as legal expenses. But a lot of DAs will say, look, if we know somebody broke the law, we're obligated to pursue that. And some people are saying, well, Alvin Bragg, the district attorney in Manhattan, is doing this for political reasons. But I'll tell you that when he came into office, I think it was in 2021, I think, there were other cases that they wanted to pursue. The previous district attorney had wanted to pursue some of the real estate dealings with Trump and the Trump organization. And Alvin Bragg chose not to go after those ones and went after this. And like I said, I don't think it's the strongest. I do think, based on the allegations and the evidence that I've seen, yeah, that there was a misclassification. But again, this can be dismissed as it was an accounting error. It was, this was not egregious. But I think you highlight the point that everybody's skipping over what the actual payment was for. Nobody's even concerned about, I guess, the morality of it.
Well, yeah, a former president essentially trying to hide an affair or an alleged affair, because we don't know that, and Trump denies it, to be clear. But he's trying to, in the advance of the election, trying to hide a potential affair. Again, also worth noting, when it comes to Alvin Bragg himself, what do we know about him? Is there any chance that this is a politically stunted thing?
Well, I mean, you're never going to have a DA saying that, yes, this was based on a political motivation. So you have to look at the law and the facts and the evidence and say, well, is there evidence that this crime was committed? And the answer is yes. This is one of the aspects of our electoral system, is that this district attorney was elected. So we have the option to vote him out if there's not confidence in him. But he was voted in, and his job is to pursue crimes that he's aware of, and that's what he's doing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll find out in the coming days and coming weeks a bit more about this. But
Yeah.
Whitney, anything final that you want to add about this?
Well, I just think in context of all of the cases, right, the multiple cases that are going on, of course, are the January 6th, that's being investigated by the DOJ, holding of the classified documents, that's a second inquiry by the DOJ, and then, of course, the election issue in Georgia. And then it should also be noted that it was in December that the Trump organization was found guilty in New York for tax issues, where their former CPA, Alan Weiselberg, testified and cooperated, and now he's serving some light sentence, I believe. But the Trump organization was found to be guilty, had to pay $1.8 million as a fine, and now they're under there's somebody overseeing their books, and that was just in December. So there's a whole bunch of litigation around the Trump organization and Donald Trump himself, and this is going to be really challenging because we've never had this situation where a president or former president being indicted, arrested, potentially convicted. So this is going to be, we're setting precedent. And just like during his presidency in 2016, I used to tell my students, he's pushing on the bounds of a lot of different things, which was good in a way because it helped us to develop a body of law. We now have some precedent because we're still a relatively young country in the formation of our democracy and our jurisprudence. So it's the same thing here. Now we are going to develop a body of law. You don't want to have a president or former president, under criminal investigation, but this will happen in the future, I assume, and so now we're having some.
Let's see how many more former presidents are paying off,
right.
Allegedly paying off porn stars, but
or potential crimes being charged in the future, financial crime or something. But yeah, so in the next weeks and months, we're gonna learn a lot more.
Yeah, it's a fascinating, interesting case, interesting time, and
Yes.
especially I would imagine as a lawyer, there's a lot to get into. But 9 News legal expert Whitney Trilly, thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us here today.
It's good to be here. Thank you.